Free market enterprise is one of the main pillars of capitalist economies, being able to set up a business whenever and wherever you want, provided it's lawful. But that might not be the case in Gauteng in the future. The provincial government has passed a draft bill that excludes non-permanent foreigners from setting up shop in certain townships. Gauteng authorities say this will clear up regulatory concerns, which South Africans accuse foreign nationals of violating. So to discuss this is Sharon Ekambaram, head of the Refugee and Migrant Rights Program at Lawyers for Human Rights, and Matupani Masha, director of Inclusive Economy at the Gauteng Economic Development Department. Very good morning to both of you. Matupani Masha, let me start off with you first. Tell us more about this bill, what it's hoping to achieve.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to just discuss this important piece of legislation with your audience, and good morning to Sharon as well. So basically, I think in a nutshell, the bill is more about taking deliberate steps to allow townships to become much more fully fledged commercial zones, both by obviously streamlining rules that basically governs where and how you can actually run a business. So basically, in the main, what the bill intends to do is just to basically make it easy to open a business and formalize business and townships so that we are able to frame support in terms of these enterprises. But in the main, I think what we've been advocating for is that to really understand the gist of the bill, you need to actually look at it in totality. So that you understand what the bill intends to do. So in the main, yes, what we are saying is that it's much more designed to make sure that we create enabling conditions in the townships so that we enable expansion of businesses there. Of course, this is from experience. Remember that in the last 5 years or so, we have been implementing a program in the township. We've invested a lot in infrastructure. However, we know that one of the existing and current constraints remains the regulatory structure, which in the main, it's what you have is that we have regulations that are much more suited for your suburban areas that are currently being also applied in the townships. And we think that there's a case there to be made in terms of intervening and make sure that we streamline and we streamline those
so in a nutshell, this is protecting South Africans against foreigners who don't have the right paperwork to open up shops. Is that it?
Not necessarily. I think that narrative has been blown a lot out of proportion. It doesn't necessarily seek to do that. The bill is not banning anybody. It does not render anything that is currently legal illegitimate. It does not. But what it basically seeks to do is to pretty much affirm South Africans in a sense that we are able to enable them to access support exists, because at the moment 90% of township enterprises are informal, as an example. So meaning that as things stand, or you only have 10% of township enterprises that can actually access, whether it's private sector support or government support, basically any support that can only be accessed through formal channels. They can't have that. They can't access that.
Okay, so let's bring Sharon in here on this bill that has only been tabled at this stage. Sharon, I believe, and understandable in this climate, that you have concerns.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, Mr. Matupani, as well. We have concerns, and I think the important point you're raising is about the climate. This bill is being promulgated in a context of xenophobia, violence against foreign nationals, and I think it's equally important to consider the implications for this kind of bill of issuing of licenses in the context of corruption. You know, we have just recently, as Lawyers for Human Rights, issued a report on the extent of corruption that we witnessed through working with our clients, asylum seekers, refugees, with bribes and distortion, extortion, of money from very, very vulnerable populations. And I think that those are some of the things that we have to consider. Is this policy going to do more harm than good? And I'm afraid, our position is that we're worried that it is going to do more harm than good. I think that there's enough empirical evidence that has been produced around the vibrancy of the informal economy and how much that economy, whether it is migrants, whether it's foreign nationals, whether it's asylum seekers, whether it's refugees, and South Africans that are working together in the informal sector contributing to the economy of Gauteng. And so that's the first point which I'm worried about, that this bill hasn't taken that research into account. There's no empirical research that has informed this conclusion that the Gauteng ANC government has come to conclusion to put this bill on the table. And I think the other point I want to raise is that refugees and asylum seekers are not permanent residents. They have a particular documentation and they will be excluded from this. And as per their status in the country, they have a right to work. And this is now being challenged and will be seriously impeded. And that goes against international law, it goes against our very constitution. And the founding principle of the Bill of Rights is the right to dignity.
Okay, let me put that to Matlopane, if I may. So, Matlopane, what we heard there, that this will exclude those who are here, and it'll remove their right to work, those who are refugees, and it could lead to xenophobic violence.
No, not necessarily. I think, obviously, as I reiterated earlier, that the bill does not seek to delegitimize anything that is legal, that is currently happening in the township. And I think that point is quite important. And I think the issues that Sharon is raising are quite important, and I think those have been taken into consideration. But also, as you know, that the bill is currently out for public consultation until the end of the month. So part of the democratic process around participation is that it will definitely lead to much more inputs and so that it actually shapes and enriches the final product. But also what we know also from the research that we've done is that, remember, and correctly what Sharon is saying, is that the accusations around whether, for example, foreign nationals have easy access to certain services in terms of, for example, opening business and so forth, those perceptions, for us, part of implementing the bill will pretty much put those perceptions to bed. For example, if you streamline and you simplify access to, for example, business registration and so forth, it will therefore deal and do away with those perceptions that certain sections of community may be able to do or access, for example, certain services quite easier. So for us, yes, the concerns around the letter of the law and sort of the constitutional provisions in our country have been taken into consideration, and I think we do appreciate the fact that I mean, Sharon and the team are obviously paying a lot of attention to it. But
yeah, yes, I think the timing is interesting with this, and possibly now is not the right time to do it. I mean, Sharon, when you look at how spouses operate in the township economy, I mean, they really are the lifeblood of the township economy. Most of them are run by foreign nationals, but what's important is how they supply the supply chain favours many South Africans, so it keeps actually a lot of South Africans in work.
Jane, just to correct you, most of the informal economy and spaza shops, there is no research that shows that this is predominantly run by by foreign nationals or by refugees or by migrants. There is research showing the second point that you raised, which is critical, the mutual manner in which the informal economy is working, whether it's waste recyclers, whether it's working in inner city Johannesburg, and the nature in which it's actually referred to as the Pan-African market. And these are things we must celebrate as part of the African continent. And unfortunately, the way in which this bill has been formulated may have the right intentions. And I hear the points that Mr. Matlopane is raising around the constant scapegoating of migrants, saying it's all these undocumented people running illegal businesses. But the solution is not to feed and fuel that by putting in these measures. For me, there's research, and this needs to be shown, that over the last 15 years, every initiative by a foreign national in the inner city in Gauteng has actually resulted in 2 or 3 South Africans getting a job in the same initiative. Are we quantifying the amount of investment that foreign nationals are making in paying landlords in backyard accommodation? So how do we enhance this? And my fear is that this bureaucracy is going to make it more difficult. And we need to find ways of ensuring that those conditions of work are made better.
Okay, Sharon, we're going to have to leave it there. Sharon, Ikam, Baram and Matupani. Masha, thank you very much for talking to us. You can understand why regulation needs to be put into place to protect South Africans, but it also must be sensitive to many of the foreigners who work here and contribute to our economy. And when we